So I just finished my 2-week break, and it shouldn't be a surprise to anyone that before I get back into regular content and covering lore, we need to talk about this. I don't want to talk about everything over and over again, because I'm sure you've heard all of the details of the horrible news that's come out of Bungie, and I'll be honest, as I saw it unfolding, I just was unbelievably bitter. The success of Final Shape has not been paid off, and well, I'm sure you've heard the rest of it from fellow creators like Cross and Datto. Everything they have said and everything that other community members have said rings true for me as well. It should be unsurprising that I'm furious, and that I'm incredibly sorry for all of the Bungie developers who brought Destiny to life. The only thing from all of that coverage that I want to reiterate before getting into the rest of this video and what it is just this. Yet again, we have reached a moment where it is unbelievably clear that we need to stop saying Bungie when praising Destiny, and the reason for that is this: we now need to differentiate harder than ever between the working developers who slaved away on Final Shape and created an incredible product that was well worth our time and money, and the Bungie leadership team, the executives whose reckless choices left the community in limbo, creators like myself scared for their income, and most importantly of all, developers without a job. All of these failures fall on leadership, and don't shed a tear for them. I imagine that Pete's already dried his on a new vintage car as it is. Today, though, I wanted to focus on something different. This video has been titled The Path Forward because it's about what happens next. That's why today I wanted to talk about the future of the narrative for Destiny, why despite the bad news being as bad as it is, Destiny isn't going anywhere, and what my plans are for the channel and my Destiny content going forward. Before we get into any of that though, I did want to give a moment to give a highlight to some of the developers from the narrative team who were laid off. We have had some absolutely incredible stories over these last few years, thanks to them, and I wanted to use this first space in the video to thank them. There has been a lot going on in the last few days of where we direct our anger, and there's also been a lot of developers out there sitting there and saying this is the time when we need to be supporting the people who have been laid off. Unfortunately, there's not much I can do in real life to support them, but this is something I can do. If ever this video is seen by someone who's in a position to hire any of these talented individuals, I wanted this to be a bit of an endorsement, but I also wanted to sit here and highlight the amazing moments that these people gave us throughout the narrative where possible. First of all, I was informed by one of the Bungie employees still at the company that the longtime Destiny historian at the studio has been let go. Ashley Flanagan was transferred over to Marathon recently as a narrative designer, but prior to that point, she'd always been a key collaborator. Members of the narrative team describe them as a godsend, and considering their role, I think it's not hard to see why. They also contributed to the Final Shape and helped it to resonate with the community. The way that it resonated so strongly is in part thanks to her. Next, we have narrative designer Keilani Marrero, who I knew initially thanks to her work on the lore surrounding Nezarec. To this day, those lore readings are some of the more chilling pieces of lore in Destiny because they describe what I think are the closest descriptions to genuine terror that I've ever read. She really captured the eldritch nature of the final god of pain. Beyond that though, if you enjoyed the wildcard exotic mission that you all did to get your still hunt, yeah, she was the narrative owner of that, and led the charge on bringing a key moment of closure on Crow and Cade's story together. A perfect passing of the torch moment that wouldn't have been able to happen without her.
I don't understand.
It's a new cloak. If you're going to be the next Hunter Vanguard, you'll need one.
The Vanguard dare.
Isn't law. If it was, Aldrin would have the position. But none of that matters. This needs to be your choice. If you don't want it, or you're not ready, don't do it.
Speaking of Crow, another talented member of the narrative team who was laid off was the senior narrative designer Robert Brooks, who has been working on the seasonal narratives of Destiny for the past 4 or 5 years since Season of the Hunt. He was absolutely instrumental to so many storylines and pieces of lore that we've received since then. His narrative fingerprint on the game is completely unquestionable. From the Season of the Splicers expunge missions to all of the lore and story surrounding Micah 10 and the Kvostov quest in Final Shape, to the lore from the Trials of Osiris concerning Reed 7, Aisha and Shayura. He's also responsible for a ton of stuff in Final Shape that got added, such as Luzaku's story and the cinematic where Cade and Zavala were reunited. His list of accomplishments goes on, and I can almost guarantee that most of you will celebrate something that he's done no matter what part of the story you've enjoyed over the years, because his narrative depth is just so intertwined with the last 5 years of the game.
Look at you, all moved out and living on your own.
This one will not be goaded by your taunts, Sky Mother.
It's not a taunt, honey. It's praise. You might be the first of my brood to actually understand.
The Final Shape was also made possible thanks to its narrative lead, Quan Peng. Quan's work on the Final Shape and the content that we've yet to experience in the upcoming episodes was essential. His ability to coordinate fellow team members and help them to realize their various projects within each of these releases made him a critical pillar of the narrative team. Without him and his support, a lot of the stuff that we experienced might not have made it out the door in time. Sorry, I couldn't find any clips of anything that was specifically his, but given his role, it's likely that he helped a bunch of stuff in the game, and that he is responsible for more than you realize that you've played. And last, but certainly not least, senior narrative designer Hazel Monforton. Her work on some of Destiny's seasonal content has been considered iconic enough to spout its own miniature fan bases within the community. She is responsible for some of the great writing behind The Drifter and Eris Morn and their evolving story, as well as the continuing story of Osiris and Saint 14. She's credited with work on Zavala and Sophia's cutscene that absolutely broke me in the Season of the Haunted, as well as Eris's transformation into the Hive God of Vengeance back in the Season of the Witch. Iconic moments all in their own, but for me, it also stands to reason that she has created what I think is one of Destiny's best one-liners since its modern era in the last 5 years. One that stands the test of time, and when I heard it the first time made me go, ooh, touché, that's neat.
The Spire may be an emanation of Savathun's desire to control the light.
Who died and made you an expert on throne worlds?
Crota.
Obviously, these are not the only people who were laid off from Bungie. There are entire departments where whole teams are gone. There are so many people who have been let go, and these are just the people that I was close with regards to my area of work. They were on the narrative team. I looked at their stuff on a daily basis. I talked about it on the regular, and I gave special attention to their work because this is my area of the game that I tend to cover. And so I felt like it was important that I spoke about them in particular. But there are so many others who have also been let go over the past 12 months. So please, if you are in a position to hire some of these incredibly talented developers, their talent speaks for itself. There is this wave of talent that has just been let go from Bungie, and there is an opportunity to give these people a livelihood whilst also taking in some of the industry's best narrative professionals and professionals in other game development disciplines. So if you are in that position somehow, maybe if you're running an indie studio, that's my word. In the meantime, for me and from the community that enjoyed their work so much, I think it's fair to say that they will be sorely missed, and our game will doubtless be lesser for the absence that we see now. I wish you all well for the work that you've done and for the stories that you've helped tell in this game. I will miss you all, and I'm so glad that I even got to listen to some of the stuff you wrote. Next up, I do want to talk about the future of the narrative, and I wanted to let you guys know a little of what's been communicated publicly by members of the narrative team who were laid off. In particular, Hazel, who we mentioned just a moment ago, did earlier tweet that the narrative and the story is still in good hands. We do know that the work of the team members who were laid off is going to still be visible in-game as far as what's launching with Revenant and Heresy is concerned. Those story beats are going to still be crafted by the amazing team at Bungie. Despite the team having been hit hard, they've still got a lot of talent that's working on what comes next. So, Hazel in her last words states, "Do not worry about the narrative of Destiny." And whilst it's hard not to worry when so much talent has been lost, Members of the narrative team have been talking with confidence about the future of Destiny's narrative even before these layoffs, and the fact that this is coming from someone who's just been laid off tells me that, well, there is still going to be some confidence regardless. That in itself is just nice to hear. It tells me a lot about what's going to happen over the next few years. Even if the delivery cadence of content in the game is going to be reduced even further, it means that we are still going to be receiving stories of a similar caliber to what we saw earlier. Frontiers implies that we'll be seeing a wider look into the universe of Destiny generally, but the reduced cadence is still really going to be sad to see, because I don't know about you guys, but I've grown used to this amount of Destiny content every year. I think it's also worth noting there is a little misinformation bounding about within the community about the topic of Destiny 3 and how the story moves forward in that sense. Most people have corrected themselves by now, but I think it's important to note again that Destiny 3 was never truly in development. There was a cancelled Destiny project known as Payback that has been shelved, with both Mark Noseworthy and Luke Smith losing their jobs as they worked on it. This was what people believed Destiny 3 was, but as it stands, Destiny 3 was seen by the studio internally as being too risky to create. And whilst I think most people think that that's terrible news, hear me out, this might actually be something for the better in the long run. Bad as it sounds now, I think the financial trouble and the development hell that the game would have seen if a part-finished D3 was with us by this point would have been so much greater than simply starting fresh. Projects that get bogged down in development hell tend to release in a mess, and if Destiny 3 had released in a sorry state, it could have meant the closure of Bungie. If Bungie and Destiny recovers at some point down the road, a potential D3 option is left open for us to look into, and that feels laughable now, I know, especially in light of the layoffs and the community's morale being sent down into the deepest, darkest trenches, but let's not forget that we've been here before, and we've literally seen a comeback happen in a similar manner to this, literally this year. It was not believed that we would recover our morale in time for everything that was going into Final Shape, but then Into the Light happened, and the Final Shape happened, and I think they stand as examples that tell us that these kinds of things aren't impossible, despite them being made more and more improbable by Bungie's leadership team. The Final Shape sales might not be up to snuff, but the critical reception isn't going to go unnoticed. If the stars align, it's possible. Copium, I know, but we say all of this on the back of the most unlikely comeback in gaming. I'm at this point here where if I'm a betting man, I bet on the Bungie developers, but I don't bet on Bungie because of the Bungie executives. I'm sure that whenever they release content and they're allowed to make it in a complete sense and a complete fashion, like they were allowed with Final Shape, that it will be spectacular. But I'm also of the opinion that when you actually take a look at Destiny's cadence and Destiny's missteps, more often than not, it's because of Bungie's executives failing to recognize what's important, meddling, or simply preventing developers from doing their job in a decent amount of time. All of this is for me to state that there is a chance that if all of these issues are somehow sidelined, that the creation of a Destiny 3 isn't impossible. But let's be really clear. The road to get there will take years of recovery. The path to get there is unbelievably narrow and is filled with potentially damaging decisions that unfortunately have to be taken by whoever is in leadership. And as far as I can tell, I do not have much confidence in leadership. The path exists, they just need to not wander from it. As for whether that will happen or not, well, that remains to be seen. As for the idea of what the actual future of Destiny is going to look like narratively, well, it's clear the story is at a point where it's allowed to evolve as it needs to, and there are plenty of potential foes for us to still fight. Xivu Arath, Savathûn, Maya Sundaresh, Fikrul, the Scion Rebels, the Vex generally, the remnants of the Dread, the Seven Lost Ahamkara, the Nine, these are all avenues narratively that Bungie can explore. We just need to see what those avenues really lead to, and whether there is one that leads to something greater than all the others. It's also clear that in the background, Bungie is continuing to build out bigger threats and ideas of villains such as the Winnower. The universe of Destiny will inevitably build to another cosmic threat. It will be a long wait before any of that takes center stage. Right now, there are other things we clearly need to do. Either way, it's clear that the narrative has directions that it can be steered in. It's just a case of where it will go and what it can do with those directions. Next, though, I think we need to note a very simple point about Destiny's future. Generally, in the financial sense, not the narrative of it, but the future of the game. Which is just that, despite being in decline, this isn't a complete collapse. To put it really simply, Destiny is still Bungie's biggest moneymaker. So long as that continues to be the case, they'll continue making more content for it. That isn't to say that we won't see a more competitive live service space from now onward, though. We've seen our fair share of failed Destiny killers over the last 10 years, from Anthem to Suicide Squad, but there are also live service games that have carved out their own niche. Final Fantasy XIV, The First Descendant, and of course Warframe are all competitors in this space that are worth your time and worth playing, and my hope would be that we can see these games continuing to push themselves to become better, regardless of what's going on. Warframe has spent the last decade or so in a place of calm and confident brilliance, and whilst it's never taken as big a slice of the live service pie, it's still worthy of your time. My hope is that, despite Destiny's presence being humbled somewhat, the fact that it now sits in closer parity to its peers means that there will be people who will sit there and see more closely what other live services from outside of Destiny's space are doing correctly, and that we can then all iterate properly as an industry and improve the service throughout. Destiny's presence amongst its peers does also bring some other things into contrast, which is why I say the game isn't going anywhere. It is still the best feeling first-person shooter as far as the gameplay is concerned, and it has a unique system of build crafting that isn't quite like other things that we've seen in gaming. The narratives that Destiny's also been able to tell are worthy of praise too, and whilst there isn't anything to doubt that there are excellent narratives in other games like Warframe, from the Second Dream all the way up to the New War and beyond, it is to say that good stories will make Destiny stand out if it's able to keep telling them. Simply look at the reaction to The Division or The First Descendant to see the alternative. So whilst there is clearly going to be a decline, no, I want to clearly put it there and state, with what I think is a reasonable stake in the ground, that Destiny isn't spontaneously dead. The industry of content creators, and gamers generally, is far too quick to jump to hyperbole. There are some instances where a game truly is dead on arrival, be it Anthem or Suicide Squad. But there are some instances where it can suffer multiple body blows, but the core of the game is still excellent, which means that it can still go onward. If Destiny does die, it's not going to be because of one mortal strike like this. It'll instead be because of 1,000 cuts that bleed it dry. And make no mistake though, this last year and a half worth of blunders has helped push towards a more mortal path for the game. The attrition is starting to add up. It's not in a great space, but things are not over yet. Destiny is down, but certainly not out. And if Into the Light showed us anything, it's that the ship can still be set right. Finally, this leaves me. What are my plans for all of this? What's my stake in the future? Well, I wish it was simple, but it's really not. One thing I do know is this. I stated about a month ago that my purpose was to tell stories. I'm going to continue covering Destiny. I'm going to continue being your Destiny lore nerd. But I will be exploring other avenues with other bits of content. I'm going to look into reviving T-Slape a bit more with Bob, Cromar, and Martin and the rest of the gang, but I also wanted to take things a little bit further. My love of telling stories is something I wanted to expand upon even further. I'm going to be looking into how to do that best. Sam, Robert, and I meant to push to start BG&B, where I would have been talking about the lore of Dungeons & Dragons. BG&B standing for Baldur's Gate and Beyond, where we were trying to launch the channel with the release of Baldur's Gate 3 last year. And, well, life came at me quick, and came at the rest of us real quick, so yeah, we did have to leave that momentarily, and I think it's fair that we might look into redoubling that effort now. I also think that maybe I should expand my horizons further. Whilst I won't be leaving Destiny, I do want to get to a point where there's an avenue and an outlet where I can just tell any story I want, regardless of whether it's the rich science fiction story of a game like Mass Effect or the dark and gruesome bloody histories of a game like Doom. No matter where you go, I want to be able to tell the story and give you context and show you the richness of these universes. So that's what I'll keep doing. Whether that means I start a new channel, whether that means I continue making content on this one, I don't know. But for now, and for the foreseeable future, expect Destiny content on the channel. But don't be surprised if I start sitting down and telling you all some stories from other avenues and other points in the near future. No matter what game I cover, I will still endeavor to be your lore master. So, with that in mind, more lore content will be returning as of the next few days. So will shorts, so will T-Slape, and we'll get new lore stuff soon after that. Either on this channel or on another. For now though, Ad Astra, thank you for listening.